Thanks for the opportunity. I've listened with interest this morning. I think some of the things I'm going to talk about do fit in with the theme that's coming through. I'm dismayed at the debt repayments, employment needs and the third world survival scenarios that Bob was talking to us. And what can we do about that? And when I saw the graph there that even all the output from the sun's not going to be enough, or do we bother at all? Yes, I think we do. We still have to bother. Now, to be a realist, I believe that private transport will remain dominant in the travel profiles of most New Zealanders, regardless of any recognition of peak oil. That's just a fact of life. We hate going back on the convenience of what we have, and we will look for anything to try and preserve our personal mobility. And the private car is such a flexible and useful device. Other budget items in your household surveys, Steve, what I'd like you to suffer before people will drop using their personal pod to get around. A guy from the OECD, when he was out here some years ago, reckoned that oil prices and petrol prices would have to go up then at least 8 times above what they were now for it really to have an effect upon the hip pocket nerve of developed countries. So we are needing to try and raise the extent of public transport to try and get this modal share up a bit more and entice some more people out of some of their trips in their cars. You won't get them out of everything. And I've even thought about the other day, why can't we have a click-clack type cars where you can click in the back end of a little goggamobile or something, which is your prime mover. You can put in the back of it a utility vehicle or more another bit that is for more seats if you want to go a bit further and do things. You could use it for taking the rubbish to the rubbish dump or whatever, but you just got the one unit which you can just, in the garage you have the other plug-in bits you just click in. I have to give that idea to someone who can to develop it from an engineering point of view. Public transport will undoubtedly become more important as fuel prices rise. They will rise, and that is in terms of becoming more important, that's despite the historical lack of government investment compared with the current emphasis on maintaining and building roads. If we were looking for 20% public transport, why don't we get 20% of the government funds for it that are going into transport rather than going into helping the private motorists? But then again, we need to have the roads for commercial transport. The trucks will be with us forever. We will find more oil, but it will not be cheap to recover, and this will extend the period of transition to alternative fuels. We might not be allowed to develop it either. If environmental concerns become so strong, then things will get left in the ground or under the seabed and we won't get it out. So we may not have that respite of more oil supplies for New Zealand. We export oil now, we import oil. We export some that gets refined elsewhere, we import refined oil to meet our particular mix of fuel needs. We're unlikely to lead in the development of alternative fuels for transport, though we have scientists working on these issues. And I think we will remain very reliant upon imported vehicle technology as our relative market size is so small. No major world manufacturer of vehicles is going to tool up really to meet specifically New Zealand's requirements. So we are derivative. We'll take things, we might modify them. The number 8 fencing wire mentality of our history will take some of the equipment that comes in and modify it, and we might add a few gizmos to it to make it work better for us. But we will be importers of both the fuel and the vehicles for some time, which makes us vulnerable. So how can we reduce the amount of fuel that we need for transport? Those innovations will mostly come offshore, from offshore. If we have thought about them here, the development of them will tend to take place offshore. We don't have the venture capital in New Zealand to really take many of these things forward. We have had a history of vehicle dumping upon us, mostly from poorly performing in terms of greenhouse gas emissions. The importation of second-hand cast-off vehicles is likely to continue because it's so cheap, unless we change the way in which we tax things. And if the gas guzzlers got taxed more, or the bigger cars got taxed more, fine, we might change our behaviour in what we buy. But it's so cheap to get a motor vehicle in this country compared with other countries. It is so easy to get a license to drive them that we have very young people, and I at the age of 15 had my license and I've been driving ever since. There will be, and I think Steve's presentation indicated this to some extent, the need to think about where people live and where the opportunities are for them to access from where they live. I think there will be a rise in home-based work supported by high-quality communications. It is not the answer to everything, but it will be part of the mix. The old cottage industry, tradition in a modern form. There will be less need for some traditional CBD functions to co-locate in the CBD, and an increased need for localised neighbourhood retailing and social spaces. Will everything focus upon the new CBD in terms of the transport patterns? There was an assumption, I think, that in Steve's work that the CBD was still a primary focus. Though we have, he showed the other centres that are around and linking them up, maybe people want to come into that and go around that, and will they carry on into the centre? If we want a vital heart to our city and not a donut city, then we've got to do something about how accessible that central core is. There will be land use changes. Less horizontal segregation in land uses, once deemed incompatible, will have more vertical separation of some of these land uses and mixed uses. That will help considerably to make the various neighbourhoods much more livable and make it possible for various services to service those neighbourhoods to be co-located. It will help with the public transport ridership if the density of living increases along transport corridors and at major transport hubs. This all in the interest of trying to reduce the amount of energy we require to move people on a per capita basis. The various power sources that are available to us. Well, more distributed generation of electricity from green housing and from industry. Redirection of water from surplus west coast run-of-the-river sources into existing hydroelectricity catchments. It's a no-brainer. There are ideas, and engineers have looked at these things, but why don't we actually do it and bore the tunnel through, catch the water on the other side and put it back into the headwaters of our existing hydro catchments so that they don't run short of water. The distribution of our rainfall is such that a supply from the west coast is pretty assured. Possible sequestration technology developments could lead to reassessment of plentiful coal resources. Many with who have a green outlook on life are saying leave it all in the ground. It's too dirty. It contributes too much to greenhouse gases. Well, don't leave it buried if we can use it in a cleaner way. But the cleaner technology still has to be developed. The techniques of sequestration have to be proven. I don't discount it as a way of extending the usefulness of fossil fuels in the future, if we can use it in a cleaner way. We dabble with wind power, we dabble with marine turbines. The wind blows, the tidal currents flow. Nature has given us those, so we should keep harnessing that as much as possible. There are biofuel experimentations taking place. We have blended fuels now. Aircraft are flying with blended fuels 4-engine aircraft, one engine running on complete biofuel in some experimentation, and they're not falling out of the sky. So even the aeronautical side of things, which is looked upon as a terrible carbon footprint by many people, is actually improving its game plan. And it will go on doing so. The advances in technology in aviation have been huge over a century. It'll go on. Turning now then to Canterbury, to Christchurch. Post-earthquakes, and we had another good shake-up this morning. 4.9, off Godley Head somewhere. It woke me up. Post-earthquake rebuilding plans, as outlined in the draft city plan, indicate thinking is now looking to take energy consumption into consideration. We haven't had energy audits done for suburban developments ever in the past that I know of. Some of Steve's work is beginning to look at the consequences of the way in which we distribute our housing. We need to do that more. Energy efficient buildings, energy efficient transport, energy efficient distribution of activities. These are all important. Public transport can help shape a sustainable settlement pattern for Canterbury. It is not just a derived demand, as some economists would tell us. It can be used to help shape the pattern of development, where people live, where things are, and how efficiently we tie that all together. So I say, yes, let's do it. Urban public transport will continue to be dominated by bus options for the next 10 years. I can't see that changing. But reserved corridors must be convertible to rail transport-based transport probably sooner than some people think. And the idea that we can have public transport systems that are not tied to routes on demand actually exists already. Taxis do that, but they're too expensive for the general run-of-the-mill public. But a shared taxi type system, which is a dial-a-ride bus system, is a here and now thing that works in other parts of the world. And they feed from particular residential areas to a focal point, be it a suburban mall or something like that, and then they connect to other rapid transport from there. So you can tie the whole of your connected villages of a metropolitan area together. And in some of those areas that Steve showed you on his maps that are the transport disadvantaged but in terms of public transport, and people reliant upon their private cars, could actually utilise a dial-a-bus type system. Down in the Sumner area, I've often thought the small dial-a-buses can get around those roads and up on the hills very easily and then bring them to a focal point. We need the exclusive right-of-way corridors. That's essential to separate cars from public transport. If your public transport is caught in ordinary traffic, it is no better than the ordinary traffic, and it takes more time. So you need your public transport for the long haul systems in particular to be so swift that they beat the car. If you're driving in from Rangiora, the tram should beat you into the centre of the city. Every time. So what's the outlook for light rail? We have this debate going on at the moment. To me, a key decision must be to integrate the mainline rail passenger service, which we don't have at the moment, we used to have them, to so-called light rail solutions. To do that, the two tracks have to be the same gauge. For God's sake, don't do what they did in Australia with the different state gauge systems there and have railways at different gauges. They've only managed to tie most of their ports together with standard gauge in recent history. They've still got train systems running on tracks of different gauge, and they can't really hook them all up. I think the proposed light rail between the University of Canterbury and the new central city, even with extension to the airport, is not, in my opinion, the first segment of light rail network that should be built. I see joining the mainline rail to the central city as a much more logical and cost-effective step, especially if they include a loop around the new CBD boundary, and it will provide the needed demonstration effect that will culminate in demands for even more light rail and more government expenditure into PT, rather than into private transport, or infrastructure for private transport. Where should that light rail come off? Where should it actually run? I have ideas, other people have ideas. One idea that I've heard recently was that it should run down Manchester Street, and it runs right along the, basically servicing the whole of the redesigned CBD. God forbid I would also bring it off the main line at Riccarton, and I would bring it through Hagley Park. There's two routes. The obvious one to connect to Armagh Street and to Manchester Street and reconnect to mainline rail would be to bring it along the access road system that exists in Hagley Park at the moment, which is access controlled. Bring it through there. Hey, you're bringing transport into Hagley Park? Mayor's lost their mayoral chains for proposing changes to Hagley Park, but we're in new times. I think it might be possible. If you can't do that, you have a wide street in Riccarton Avenue, which runs from Riccarton through past the hospital, and that used to have trams running on it anyway. The first step for light rail in, I just mentioned that. And it would provide regional access to a new compact CBD and to major regional services that are planned. If we don't link our new CBD to the region, how can we expect the regional type functions which we want there to access sufficient population to make them viable? Otherwise, we'll have a donut. The central city will die and it'll all be in a peripheral area. I've got 5, righto. We can extend the routes later after we've proved that this way of going about things is workable in a city of this size. But start doing it now and grow with the city as it grows. Another thing about train trams compared with buses is that you can load a lot of bicycles on them as well. Much easier than on buses. So people can use their bicycles at either end of the long haul. So you can cycle from somewhere in Rangiora, get on at the station, take your cycle, come into the city, get off, get on your cycle and carry on. We could also have the cycle hire systems that other European and American cities have, where when in a defined area you can put your money in the slot, get your bicycle out and ride off and put it back in the slot again when you're finished with it. Last point on this slide is I don't discount substantial improvements in fuel savings from new automotive diesel engine and vehicle designs, especially for commercial trucking. I say they are exciting, or there are exciting developments taking place. I've been talking with some of the ones intimately involved in that when I was on my trip to Europe recently. I am very excited with the improvements that can come from certain types of efficiency gains, some that I had never ever thought about. And this is likely to go commercial very, very soon. So, my conclusion, adversity, and we have it at the moment, is a great stimulator of innovation and design. We have chances that we didn't have a year or 2 years ago because of the earthquake damage and because people are beginning to think outside the old square, not the cathedral square. No. Do not look to more of the same. We want, I think, to be forward visionary thinking and within our financial means do things now which are good for the future and have the future help pay for them. The citizens now don't have to pay for all the development now because they're going to be there for 50 to 75 years with that infrastructure you put in now. They're going to benefit future populations, so therefore they can help pay off the loans and things like that. They got the things there in the first place. But mobility is treasured. None of us want to give up our personal mobility. We get older and nature does it for us. And I'll be walking around with my Zimmer frame when I'm as old as my mother, who's about to turn 106, and she's still walking around with a Zimmer frame. Okay, so it's in my genes to be here a long time. I want to see some of these things take place. In my lifetime, please. In her lifetime, she's seen huge technological changes. Well, I want to see them all too, of a similar amount. But we need enabling leadership. We've got 3 levels of government or something like that at the moment. We've got various things taking place. Where's the leadership in all those, and how do they all tie together? We've got central government with a minister, Brownlee portrays one image. We have Sarah portraying another image, and we have Bob Parker, the Mayor of Christchurch City Council, portraying another image. Who really is going to drive all this? Which one of them? All 3 of them? Are they the 3 wise men? I'm not sure. Anyway, I'll leave it there.